You've been called lazy, spacey, messy, flaky, too sensitive, too emotional, dramatic. You've heard, "You're so smart, why can't you just get it together?" more times than you can count. And every time, you believed them. You thought the problem was you, that if you just tried harder, cared more, or fixed whatever was broken inside you, things would finally click. Here's the truth. You don't have a character problem. You have ADHD. And the reason no one noticed is because ADHD in women doesn't look like what most people, including doctors, think it looks like. In this video, you're going to learn why your ADHD was missed, why it got misdiagnosed as something else, and what you can actually do to finally get real help. Let's start with what ADHD actually is. It's the same disorder whether you're male or female. The same brain regions are affected. The same neurotransmitter systems aren't working the way they should. The same core deficits are there. Executive function, focus, impulse, control, working memory. It's all the same condition. But the way it shows up, the symptoms people actually see, can look completely different depending on your gender. And that difference comes from two things: biology and social expectations. Those two forces shape how your ADHD presents to the world, and more importantly, whether anyone recognizes it. Boys with ADHD tend to be hyperactive. They climb on furniture, they interrupt, they break rules, they get in trouble at school. Their ADHD is loud, it disrupts classrooms. Teachers notice, parents notice, doctors notice. The kid gets referred for testing, gets a diagnosis, gets medication and support. Girls with ADHD, we tend to be inattentive. We daydream, we lose things, we forget what the teacher just said. We're disorganized, overwhelmed, anxious, but we're not disruptive. We don't cause problems for other people, so no one thinks, "That kid needs help." They think, "She's just not trying hard enough." And here's the worst part. Society expects women to be naturally good at organizing, planning, managing schedules, remembering details. When we can't do those things, people don't think maybe her brain works differently. They think she's irresponsible. And society is way less forgiving to women when we mess up. So we learn to work incredibly hard to hide our struggles. We mask, we compensate, we build coping mechanisms that let us look normal on the outside while we're falling apart on the inside. That doesn't mean women with ADHD don't experience hyperactivity or impulsivity. We absolutely do. It just looks different. Instead of bouncing off walls, we have racing thoughts that won't shut up. Instead of interrupting in class, we talk really fast or blurt things out in conversations and then immediately regret it. Instead of breaking rules, we make impulsive decisions in relationships, spend money we don't have, or take risks we shouldn't. But because it's not the stereotype, no one connects it to ADHD. And if you're someone who menstruates, there's another layer. Your ADHD symptoms change throughout your menstrual cycle. During certain parts of your cycle, your symptoms can get significantly worse. Same thing during major hormonal shifts like puberty, pregnancy, postpartum, and menopause. Your brain is dealing with huge hormonal changes on top of already struggling with executive function, but most doctors never ask about your cycle. They don't connect the dots. So you just think you're losing your mind once a month and no one knows why. Now let's talk about what happens when your ADHD goes unrecognized. Most research on ADHD has been done on boys and men. The diagnostic criteria in the DSM, the manual doctors use to diagnose mental health conditions, was built around how ADHD shows up in males. It fits them well. It doesn't fit women nearly as well. So when a woman walks into a doctor's office struggling with focus, memory, organization, and emotional overwhelm, the doctor doesn't see ADHD. They see anxiety or depression or bipolar disorder. You get prescribed antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, and maybe it helps a little with the secondary symptoms, the anxiety and sadness that built up because you've been struggling for years. But it doesn't actually fix the core problem, because the core problem is ADHD and you're not getting treated for it. You're getting treated for the exhaustion and shame that came from living with untreated ADHD. Even if you do get referred for ADHD testing, you're less likely to get diagnosed than a man with the same symptoms. And even if you do get diagnosed, you're less likely to be prescribed stimulant medication, which is the first-line treatment for ADHD and works just as well for women as it does for men. The system is set up to miss you at every single stage. Let me tell you what this looked like in real life. Maybe you were a good kid, quiet, smart, You did well in elementary school because the structure was simple and the expectations were clear. But you lost your jacket constantly. You forgot your homework even though you'd spent hours on it. You couldn't remember what someone just said to you. You didn't get invited to social things because people thought you were weird or spacey. You felt like everyone else got a manual for life and you didn't. But you didn't talk about it. You were ashamed. You thought it was your fault. So you tried harder. You developed elaborate systems to compensate. You set 17 alarms. You wrote everything down. You avoided situations where you might mess up. And on the outside, it looked like you were fine, so no one worried. Then something changed. Maybe it was puberty and the hormonal chaos that came with it. Maybe it was high school or college when the demands on your executive function suddenly skyrocketed. Maybe it was your first serious job or becoming a parent. Whatever it was, your coping mechanism stopped working. The system you built to keep yourself together started cracking. You couldn't hide it anymore. And even then, the first doctor you saw might have told you, you can't have ADHD, you did well in school. Or, you can't have ADHD, you're not hyperactive. Or, that's just anxiety, here's a prescription. And if you didn't have someone in your life who pushed back and said, no, I want to see a specialist, you might have spent another decade thinking you were just broken. Here's what makes this even more painful. Women with ADHD tend to develop anxiety, depression, and serious self-esteem issues at much higher rates than men with ADHD. Men with ADHD tend to externalize their struggles. They act out, break rules, get in visible trouble. Women internalize. We blame ourselves. We think we're lazy, stupid, failing at being an adult, and that internal narrative does massive damage over time. By the time our struggles become obvious to other people, our core beliefs about ourselves have already formed. We've already decided we're the problem. And even after we get diagnosed, we might not take it seriously. We might not ask for accommodations. We might not get therapy or coaching. We might even go off medication because we don't feel like our struggles are bad enough to deserve help. Because we're comparing ourselves to the stereotype, the hyperactive boy, and we don't look like that, so how bad can it really be? But here's the reality. The long-term consequences of untreated ADHD in women are serious. Higher rates of substance abuse as we try to self-medicate, eating disorders, risky sexual behavior leading to STIs and unplanned pregnancies, chronic pain, self-harm, even suicide attempts. These aren't small things. These are life-altering, sometimes life-ending consequences. And they happen because we didn't get support early enough. Because our struggles were invisible to everyone else, so we had to figure out how to cope on our own. And those coping mechanisms weren't always healthy. Even if your ADHD doesn't lead to those extreme outcomes, living with undiagnosed or untreated ADHD still wrecks your life in quieter ways. Terrible self-esteem that sets you up for abusive relationships. Social anxiety because you never learned how to navigate friendships. A lifetime of feeling like you're failing at being human. Comparing your inside to everyone else's outside and always coming up short. So what do we do? First, educate yourself. Understand that ADHD in women is typically more severe than it looks. Symptoms are just the external signs of internal struggles. If you have a primarily inattentive presentation and you've been taught to mask and hide your struggles, you're not going to look as ADHD as you actually are. You might be drowning on the inside while looking perfectly fine on the outside. Second, know that women tend to underreport their symptoms. Research shows this. We minimize how much we're struggling. So if you're thinking, yeah, I have some of these symptoms, but it's probably not that bad, pause. Ask yourself if you're downplaying it because you've been trained to believe your struggles don't count unless they are disrupting other people's lives. Third, if you think you might have ADHD, go see a specialist. Not just any doctor, someone who specializes in ADHD or at least has significant experience with it. Bring evidence. Write down your symptoms. Track how they show up in your daily life. If you have a history of being dismissed or misdiagnosed, don't let that stop you. You deserve to be taken seriously. And if one doctor dismisses you, find another one. Your struggles being invisible to others does not mean they're imaginary. Fourth, if you get diagnosed, get the full support you need. Medication is important, and stimulant medication works. But you also need therapy, coaching, accommodations, and strategies tailored to how your brain works. And if you menstruate, talk to your doctor about how your cycle affects your symptoms. Some people benefit from adjusting their medication dose at different times of the month. Your hormones matter. They should be part of the conversation. Fifth, be mindful of how your ADHD shows up at different life stages. Puberty, pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause. All of these involve major hormonal changes that can make your ADHD symptoms significantly worse. If you're going through one of these transitions and suddenly everything feels impossible, that's not you failing. That's your ADHD responding to your biology. Get extra support during those times. And finally, stop comparing your struggles to someone else's. ADHD doesn't have to look loud and disruptive to be real. It doesn't have to ruin your life in obvious ways to deserve treatment. If you're struggling, you're struggling. That's enough. You don't need to hit rock bottom to justify getting help. Here's the truth. No one should have to spend years learning the hard way. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are not too sensitive or too much or failing at being an adult. You have a neurodevelopmental condition that affects executive function, and the world was not built with your brain in mind. The fact that you've made it this far while working twice as hard as everyone else just to look normal is not proof that you're fine. It's proof that you're incredibly strong. But you shouldn't have to be that strong. You deserve support. You deserve accommodations. You deserve to stop hating yourself for how your brain works. If any of this sounds familiar, take it seriously. You don't have to keep struggling alone. Whether it turns out to be ADHD or something else, if you're struggling, there's a reason. Go find out what it is. Get the help you need. And when you do, when things finally start making sense, share this with another woman who's still stuck thinking she's the problem. Because no one should have to go through life blaming themselves for their brain. You're not the problem. The system that failed to see you is the problem. Now let's fix it.